I think we can all agree Dumbledore was kind of a dick. Guys, welcome. We are finally doing this. We are finally doing Harry Potter reviews. My personal favorite series of all time. It's never going to change, so get used to it. So we're going to be doing all 8 movies starting today and going through September 1st, including, like I said, Fantastic Beasts. So I figured I would try to be open-minded about perspectives from everybody else and how it would be perceived from, objectively. And then I was just like, no, I can't do that. I've been watching these movies since I was 7. So 16 years of bias. So I'm going to be talking about my personal takes on them with some other probably general consensus things in the Harry Potter fandom. And the other thing is, I will not be talking so much about what I would like to have seen in the movies, because I think we can all agree we know what those are, like Spew and Peeves and some of the other memories and Half-Blood Prince, things like that. While they may naturally come up, that will happen, but I'm not going to specifically be focusing on talking about them. And lastly, I won't be faulting the movie for any problems that are in the books themselves, because I know they were just trying their best with what was there. Not that it would come up that much, but if it does, and if you have a problem with plot, that's not so much the movie's fault specifically. So with that, let's get started on the review for Harry Potter and the Sorcerer Philosopher's Stone. This was the first movie that I saw, obviously, that introduced me to the Harry Potter world. I was 7, and obviously I was hooked a little bit. This is quite the introduction of a movie to this world. Let's start with the pros. They did an incredible job putting in all these plot points while also just introducing us to this entire world and having to explain what everything is. And doing it in less than 2.5 hours. I mean, it feels long for a lot of people, but also that's an incredible amount of things to put in and make sense setting this all up. And I owe a lot of that to Steve Kloves, the writer, and Chris Columbus, the director. I'm going to be honest. You all know me. You know I'm a huge Spielberg fan. Spielberg was slated first to direct this. And I'm kind of glad that he didn't. Because while Spielberg does child wonder very well, it's very polished. It's very, very cinematic and everything. And so you know what I mean when I say that I think we actually needed Chris Columbus, who, not to say he's not polished, but he has a very keen sense of what is just fun. It doesn't have to be overly cinematic. It doesn't have to be overly fancy. It just needs to feel like this world. And he's really good at dealing with kids and in acting, and I think he just was the perfect choice for this because he took the material seriously. He had this authority over the imagination and the whimsical nature of this series. And along with the directing, the kids acting, I mean, the cast itself is insane. I mean, it's like they pulled all the British people out of the woodworks and off of stage and were just throw them into this movie. All of the famous British actors who are very well established. It's insane. And they just keep adding to it. It's like a collection of just all the good British actors. You'll probably find them in Harry Potter. Having 3 unknowns as the kids was a really good choice because we didn't have any previous notion of who they were unless we saw Dan Radcliffe and David Copperfield. We were able to see fresh kids in these roles. That sounded weird to say, fresh kids. You know what I mean.
I shouldn't have said that. I should not have said that.
We saw them in these roles and we could grow up with them if you were a kid when you started watching this series. They are just so good. I mean, for being 11 and 12 years old, you have those moments where Chris is like, kids, just start screaming and act happy. And they're like, yeah, In general, I think they did a very good job for being 12 years old and just being a huge fandom to start out in. But in general, the acting is, you have this amazing cast. Now, I will say that the acting gets a little exaggerated and theatrical here and there. It's very you know.
Come here, Potter! Now!
But overall, it's still very well done. But what makes this movie is if there is a translation into another medium expressing this world of Harry Potter in the books in its purest form, it's John Williams' score. He has a knack for creating iconic themes that you hear it and you're like, okay, that's what that is. And he does it yet again with this movie, but I don't know. Every time I hear the scores, specifically John Williams in the first and the second one, I just that is the Harry Potter world right there. You don't even need the visuals. That is what it is. Like the Diagon Alley scene when he walks in is one of my favorite, if not my favorite movie scene of all time. And I think I can solely credit that. Not solely, I mean, obviously the visuals, but I think I can, like, 95% credit that to that amazing score. I don't know. There's something in me that when I hear this music, there's a weird feeling that, like, I just can't describe other than, like, it's the Harry Potter world feeling. It's just something that I don't feel any other time except for when I'm hearing that score. It's amazing. John Williams is the GOAT, man. So let's talk about some cons. I think really the biggest con is the one that everybody knows is that, it gets a little slow in the second half. It's a little clunky. If you saw my video on movies I like the beginning of more than the end or the second half, that was on there. And so you know that I think it gets to be a little slow. I love the first half, then the second half it gets a little, long. It's a lot of sitting and talking, and honestly I wouldn't blame some people if they fall asleep a little bit. Relaxing, but also a little slow. And again, like I said, the acting, the production design, the costume design it is a little theatrical. It's a little, I don't want to say dated, but obviously they were trying to separate wizards from Muggle people. And when it gets to be a little more polished in the later movies, you can tell like they try to make it a little more modernized. You have more suits rather than like these 18th century like wigs and stuff. They're a little stuck behind the times. And it's weird because in the books, they're not actually either one way or the other. They actually wear just like really weird robes, colored robes, and try to fit in with Muggles, but they don't. So the way that they took it to be like a historical look, it was a little weird, but it gives it again that charming feel that like this is a feel good, introduction to this world. And of course, we have to talk about the end.
The House Cup.
Again, this is part of the book, so I'm not going to fault the movie for it, but it's just fucking hilarious. It's literally just, well, Slytherin's in literal first place and Gryffindor's in literal last place. But Dumbledore's like, what do I do about that? I don't fault him for giving more points, because obviously Harry, Ron, and Hermione, like, earned those points. It's the way he gives them. He's like, Slytherin, you win. Just kidding. We're going to give Ron Weasley 10 points, okay? Yep. And we're going to give Hermione another 10 points, yep. And then we're going to give Harry, well, let's see, how much do I have to do to kill Slytherin? It's another 100,000 points. Yeah, so that means that Slytherin loses. Oh, what's that? Oh, they're tied? Oh, well, in that case, let's see, what did anybody else do? Neville. He ate all of his green beans last night, so I'm going to give him 1/2 point. That does it, right? Yeah, it is such a bullshit moment, and we know it. It's just the way it happened. It's supposed to be a feel-good moment, and it's one of those when you're younger, you're like, oh, that was such a great ending, and then you're older, and you're like, what the fuck? Honestly, Slytherin gets such a bad rap, but that's a whole different conversation. I'm a Hufflepuff, so, it's... Hufflepuffs and Slytherins go well together. Just saying. Yes, so overall, this movie can be a little clunky and a little less polished than some of the others. However, it is the best introduction we could have gotten to this world, to this series, to these characters. I couldn't have asked for better. It's one of those that it looks like it should be cheesy and childish, but I have seen people, adults, kids alike, people I never would have imagined would be interested in a series like this, watch the first one, and then 8 movies later, they were like emotionally wrecked. They were hooked. It's insane. There's something about this series that it's not like a lot of the other, young adult fictions and dystopian movies, whatever that come out, all the fandoms today that are they feel the same, not like this doesn't have similar points, but they feel the same, or they feel like they're just moneymakers. This one was different. And I think this one was honestly, a real hinge, going from your fantasies of the 80s with puppets and prosthetics and that kind of older look to the more modern fantasies that we have now that look a little sleeker. So in terms of scoring, I'm actually going to be doing something a little different. I'm going to be scoring it based on 3 different criteria and then the overall score. The first criteria is its accuracy to the source material. Basically just how much it took from the book, what did it change? If it did change something, was it, for the better? How were the characters, were they accurate to how their characters are in the book? Things like that. And then the second criteria is the overall tone, which is, does it tonally fit not only that book, but the Harry Potter world as a whole? And then the last criteria is, obviously because it's a movie, cinematic quality. So for accuracy to the source material, I mean, I think hit the nail on the head. I mean, they introduced us to all these characters, like I said, and we knew who they were right off the bat. And it's 2.5 hours, and they pretty much included almost everything that was in the book. They made one change, as far as I can tell, and that's that they didn't get captured helping Hagrid release Norbert. It was just that they were already at his hut. But even then, that was a small change. And Neville went into the forest in the book instead of Ron, but, again, kind of a small change. Other than that, they were pretty accurate to the characters in the story, so that's a 4 out of 4. In terms of tone, that also is a 4 out of 4. Obviously, I mean, it's probably the most magical of all the movies. In terms of cinematic quality, that one I'm going to say it obviously could be a little better. Again, not that it needs to be Spielberg fancy, but there are just some things here and there that it's not completely, the CGI was okay, or this was a little cheesy looking, or that's kind of a little continuity error, whatever, here and there. You can kind of see it. I'm going to give that a 2.5 out of 4. And it just so happens that the average of all of those matches up with the score I actually wanted to give it, which is a 3.5 out of 4. While it may lack in some things, it makes up for in its overall feel and tone, which is really what drives this movie to be one of the better Harry Potter movies. So let me know what you guys think about the Sorcerer's Stone. Do you like it? Is it your favorite? Is it not your favorite? What do you think about the second half versus the first half? Personally, I really like Hagrid. And that's because I think if there is a character who the person that they chose and how he's portrayed is most accurate to what I saw in my head, it's Hagrid. You have differences from some of the other characters, but when I read it today, I still see Robbie Coltrane as Hagrid. It's spot on. It's creepy. I'll see you guys for the next one for Chamber of Secrets. So go do your homework, watch Chamber of Secrets, and as always, keep your hopes high, your stress low, and Harry Potter right in the middle.